Hey y'all, Farmer Dre back at another beautiful fall day here on the farm. I am out here with the tomatoes and I'm gonna tell you guys the truth about growing field tomatoes. So here on our farm, we grow thousands and thousands of pounds of tomatoes a year. So in the first high tunnel, the first greenhouse there, we start the seeds first week of January. The planting goal is to plant them in the soil in the high tunnel for last week of February, middle of February, towards the end of February. We go ahead and grow them out, and by second week of May, we start harvesting tomatoes. So from the first or second week of May through now, which is mid-October, we harvest tomatoes from different plantings. We got 3 tunnels here, and then we got a tunnel on my brother's place there that was full of tomatoes this year, which they didn't do too well, but they did all right. But in here, in number 1, of course, we have to heat the tunnel, so we got a propane heater up there. We have a wood stove, and then we also heat the soil with our little invention here of heating the soil. So this tunnel here, March, first of March, end of February, through now had tomatoes in it. We just came through here and cleaned everything. We got to come through and take all this out, compost this, and then come through and plant our cover crop, which this year I'm going to be planting an annual ryegrass, just to have something actively growing in the soil. Then we have different plantings, number 2, number 3. We plant different succession plantings of tomatoes, just to have tomatoes as much as we can and as long as we can here on the farm. And we sell and grow a lot of tomatoes here on the farm. We're number 2 that we're getting ready to plant some stuff for us, and this is number 3 here. These are planted I believe end of April, beginning of May, or sometime in April, and we harvested. This was a fresh tunnel to us this year. This is my first year growing tomatoes in this soil this year, so we had record numbers in here on yield, and they're still coming on pretty good. Now that it's getting colder outside, we don't have to come through here and harvest. We harvest here once a week before the Saturday markets, and that's about it. Yeah, the size is a little small, but I haven't been putting any extra fertilizer or anything like that in these, just because tomato season is just about over and people are in the fall mode and not thinking about tomatoes. But we still take tomatoes to market and still sell a few tomatoes, not too many out of here. So if you guys remember, we did plant 5 rows of field tomatoes out here, and these are just the length of the entire high tunnel here, maybe a little past. So these first 5 rows here were planted in tomatoes, and we actually never did too much out of here. We harvested a few boxes here and there, but the yield overall was okay. We didn't trellis them because we didn't think there was enough time and energy. It wouldn't be worth our while to train them. And you know, looking back now at the entire year and how they did overall, I'm gonna be real with you guys. We're probably never gonna grow field tomatoes anymore. No, we're not gonna grow any tomatoes in the field, just because the production's not there compared to the one in the high tunnels. And then out here, of course, we planted the same varieties. These tomato plants are still coming on strong, still looking good. And you can see out here in the rain, in the open to the elements, these tomato plants have been dead for a very, very long time. Perfect example, the tomatoes in here were planted in April, and they're still coming on strong. Look at all those green tomatoes still on those plants there. These are Red Deuce tomatoes here, and that's the main variety we grow here on our farm, Red Deuce and Carolina Gold as our yellow tomato. And don't get me wrong, field tomatoes do really good for others. You know, if we didn't have the high tunnels, field tomatoes did okay for us. But since we grow a lot of tomatoes, and most of the tomatoes under plastic, just the time and energy, it just doesn't justify for us to be planting tomatoes out here in the field. And I know what you guys are thinking, yo, Dre, you know, field tomatoes are so much better. They have a better flavor. You know, you're gonna be able to sell them. But in all reality, over the years of us growing tomatoes, we've kind of trained our customers at the farmer's market here in the farm store with our high tunnel tomatoes. You know, they love the flavor of them. They're just really good. They look really pretty. So whenever we take field tomatoes to the farmer's market, yes, we do sell a few, but it just doesn't justify the labor, the plastic, and everything involved into planting field tomatoes. So for me here on our farm, this is probably our last year growing field tomatoes. And like I said, they do all right if you have no other choice, and if you want to plant a few thousand plants out in the field, they do produce tomatoes. I know there's a lot of other farmers who do plant field tomatoes and love them, but you know, after a few years of selling tomatoes and growing tomatoes and building up your clientele and building up your customer base, your customers start appreciating all the time and energy that goes into growing tomatoes, and they appreciate the quality and the flavor of your good tomatoes. And then they kind of neglect, or they don't really want the tomatoes that don't look as pretty, even though they have a good flavor, even though they're perfectly the same. You know, let's be honest, if we go to a grocery store and, you know, let's say apples in the grocery store, right? Even though I don't ever buy any from the grocery store because we grow our own. But, you know, let's say you go to the grocery store and you have a product or a bag of apples that, you know, half of them are cracked or they're overripe or they're ugly, and then you have another product, the same variety, same thing, but they're fresh and they're looking good. As humans, as customers, we most of the time, maybe all the time, we go for the product that's very pleasing to our eyes. So it's the same thing at these farmers markets we go to, and over the years we realized, you know, people buy with their eyes, and the most prettiest product is gonna sell first. So that's what we realized over the years, what happens on our farm and our operation, all the farmers markets we go to. So, you know, every operation is different. For you guys, field tomatoes might be the best way to do it, but for us here on our farm, done growing field tomatoes, you know, just because, like I said, it doesn't justify for us to grow tomatoes if we're growing thousands of pounds out of the protected environment. So one of the main reasons you want to grow tomatoes in high tunnels is to protect them from the rain, from the the environment. And if you guys ever grown tomatoes, you guys know that if you have tomatoes out in your garden, you get a 3 to 4 inch rainfall, then majority of tomatoes that are going to become ripe, they all crack. And for us, we sell fresh market tomatoes. We don't process any. We just sell them as is, as we pick them. So we grade them, select them, and just sell them as is. We do have a tomato cooler to put them in, and you know, some tomatoes we pick, we don't get sold for a week or so. So if you have a crack or a blemish in your tomatoes, you got to get rid of them pretty quick, like 1 or 2 days max. And if you don't, you just have a pile of rotten tomatoes in your cooler. So that's why we aim, and our goal here is to grow the best quality tomatoes and the best looking tomatoes to be perfect, no blemishes. And doing that in the field is very, very hard. I mean, I wouldn't call myself a tomato expert, but I've been growing tomatoes for many years now. And you know, field tomatoes are just one of those things where you have no control of what you can do if you do get a big storm. But in here, we just close up the sides. They're protected. There's not much that can go wrong. Of course, with anything that you do, there's positive and negatives. Of course, in here you fight other issues, disease, you fight insect pressure. But all in all, high tunnel tomatoes is much easier to control. You control the water system, you control how much fertilizer they get, you can control the temperature, and even the relative humidity in these tunnels compared to the field tomatoes. So yeah, that's the truth of growing field tomatoes here on our farm. And I'm not speaking for everybody else, it's just for us. And for us moving forward, that's what's gonna happen. No more field tomatoes. All the tomatoes we do grow are gonna be under plastic, under protected culture. And you know, just keep that growing, keep everything nice and healthy. And the funny thing about tomatoes here on our farm is, you know, we gum through here. Whenever the frost comes, all these are gonna go ahead and frost out. But you know, we're gonna go ahead and start seed for next year's planting in #1 there on the first week of January. So we only get about 2 months free from tomatoes a year. So we pretty much grow tomatoes almost year round. We don't have ripe tomatoes year round, but tomato plants, my mind is always on growing tomatoes. And as the years are going by, and as the older I'm getting, the wiser I'm getting. And it's very true, I gotta pick my battles. So if we're gonna grow tomatoes, they're all gonna be under high tunnel, and that's about it. You know, being a young farmer, I get very aggressive, and I love to do a lot of things, but the more and more years pass by, the more things we're doing on the farm, and I'm starting to realize we gotta pick our battles, and we can't do everything. That's one thing I gotta realize for myself, and I'm starting to realize that, you know, it's easy to start something, it's easy to plant something, but then you get busy, you get carried away, and then you realize that, you know what, maybe we should focus on what does really good for us, what brings me the most income, and just stick to those crops that do really good for us. So one of those crops that don't do good for us is field tomatoes. So it's just pick and choose your battles, and then you will realize what works and what doesn't for you. Alrighty, y'all, so this is gonna be it for today. Just a real video with you guys, and letting you guys know what you guys can expect going in the future and for next year and years to come. But we still got a lot of cleanup work to do. But on days like today, the wind's blowing pretty good. It's nice and chilly. It's perfect weather for flannel or something. But you know, it fall's here. Fall's officially here. The low temperatures now are, you know, mid or upper 50s, upper 40s, lower 50s. So hopefully, from the strawberries perspective, we don't get a cold frost till about December, you know, or we'll get a frost before that, but we don't get a really cold night until about December. So let those plants grow, let those plants develop, and then we should be good to go. But yep, this is it for today. If you guys haven't already, hit that subscribe button, smash that like button if you guys enjoyed today's video. Don't forget, hit that notification icon so you guys can be notified whenever I do upload a video. I want to say thanks for watching up to this point. Y'all have a good day, and we will see you next time.